Hi, Misha here, and it's time for another Eaglemoss model in the Battlestar Galactica collection. This is issue number 10, the Colonial Raptor. I don't know about you, but it seems like these are coming out quicker now. I mean, not too quick, but it seems like the first few issues in this series were a little slower and that they've kind of sped up in 2019. We've had the original Galactica, we've had the Pegasus, we've had the Mark VII Viper, we've had the classic Raider, now we have this. And just for a scale comparison, I brought out the Mark VII, kind of one I was looking forward to, and when these were announced, I don't know, just kind of always liked it. And surprisingly, they scale pretty well. I kind of expected the Raptor to be a little small compared to the Viper, but really it's not, because according to the tech specs, lengthwise, because this is kind of a dagger shape, the Mark VII is 32 feet long and about a little under 18.5 feet wide. But of course, it's pretty narrow and not all that tall. Whereas the Raptor is kind of the opposite. It's a blocky design. It's actually, according to the tech specs, shorter at 28 feet long and only a little bit wider thanks to the little stub wings at about 18.5 feet. But of course it has a lot more mass, it's taller, has a lot more internal volume. So the Raptor has a canopy in the front for 2 crew as standard, a pilot and an electronic weapons officer who also serves as a co-pilot. It has a large cabin in the back with equipment for monitoring sensors. It can also transport 10 just individuals or up to about 8 fully armed and equipped troops, Marines most likely. It is of course sublight capable, but it also has FTL capability. It carries Tilium on board and can make anywhere from 10 to 20 jumps depending on the length. Obviously it doesn't have quite the range of a Battlestar at all, but this seems to be more of a computer limitation, calculation limitation, because keep in mind the Colonials don't use advanced AI or even advanced electronics or networked computers, so they're kind of relying on pretty primitive computers. These sticking out in the back, I think, are meant to represent the FTL, at least part of the FTL, with the main thrusters back here. It also has a hatch on the bottom. This is primarily not a fighter. It's more of a escort and support craft. The writers of the show said it was analogous to the U.S. military's EA-6 Prowler, which, by the way, I do have a video on if you're interested in the Prowler. It's a scout reconnaissance craft, also electronic warfare. Search and rescue, we see that quite often in the series. Also troop transport or civilian transport. Yeah, pretty well a very adaptable craft. It can operate in a vacuum or in an atmosphere. It has an internal weapons bay for missiles. It also has 2 cannon, or at least kinetic energy weapons as standard. It also has up to 8 external hardpoints on the wings and fuselage. It can carry rocket pods, additional missile pods. It can carry decoy drones, or electronic jamming pods. It can carry ship-to-ship missiles, and of course it can carry nuclear weapons. It's a relatively old design. It was introduced towards the end of the First Cylon War, meaning it's been in colonial service for 40 years, which really isn't that crazy. For example, the Prowler was in American service for that long. You know, a craft like this, if it works, and typically types like this are meant to be adaptable and upgradable, so it's no surprise that it's still in service, even if it's considered a bit obsolete. Still considered useful. They basically use it as a militarized shuttle in the series. And these are standard aboard Battlestars. They cannot launch from the same tubes on the flight pods as the Vipers. They don't have that tri-arrow profile. Instead, they have to actually fly off and land on a true flight deck, thanks to their girth. They are relatively slow. At least they have relatively gentle acceleration. But of course in space, it's all relative. And of course with the FTL, it does give them ability to get out of dodge better than, say, a Viper might. They are of course capable of docking with other craft. And this is unique to the modern Battlestar Galactica, the Reimagined Series. There isn't a Viper in the original. So, as for the Eaglemoss model itself, again, this is one I've been looking forward to. It kind of wraps up our colonial military fleet. Now we have 3 Vipers, we have 3 Battlestars, and we have the support craft. From this point on, if we get Colonials, it'll probably be more civilian craft like Colonial 1, maybe the Tillium refinery ship or the Astral Queen. I would say the Cylon equivalent to this would be the Heavy Raider, which itself is pretty similar to the original Raider, which we had last time. Anywho, the model's a good size. It scales well with the Mark VII. It has really good detail, but along with that means it's pretty light. It's got a lot of polymer. It does have die cast, but the more detail you have, the more polymer you end up with. We do have a canopy here. Of course, the wings are polymer. The central body is more metal. Of course, the flight pods back here are polymer. Very utilitarian looking craft, but I like it. Sort of reminds me of something we might have seen back in the old Wing Commander days. Of course, it comes with the usual numbered stand, which it doesn't really clip into like most of the Battlestar Galactica. It just sits. Seems like it might be a little front heavy, so make sure it's fully seated in the back of your stand. You should be okay. I might put just a teeniest bit of blue tack on the bottom just to make sure it doesn't get knocked forward. Doesn't seem exactly unstable, but you never know. Time. Back there is the box that these come in. It's the typical cardboard box. I have no idea if I've got it pointed the right way up for you. Oh well. It's got the foam inside with a multi-page color magazine for this, like all the Battlestar Galacticas. And as far as I know, this is the model for Boomer, Sharon Valeri, seen in Season 1 and 2. And there were a number of Raptor pilots on the Galactica. It seems like, you either had Viper pilots or Raptor pilots. They didn't often interchange. They were kind of nutty in their own different ways. Vipers were dogfighters, so that was dangerous, but Raptors were going out ahead of the fleet, scouting and often operating independently or at least in small groups. So that was dangerous in their own thing, because if their FTL got disabled, they were kind of hosed, or fracked, if you will. These could also coordinate Vipers. They were able to kind of operate as a command and control bird if needed. Kind of like a Hawkeye, an E2 Hawkeye. And again, they pretty much were a jack of all trades for the series, but a very credible one, because our own military has just such aircraft. So yeah, I would say this upholds the standards of the other Eaglemoss Battlestars, and it's nice that someone's doing these and doing them in a reasonable size. I mean, this is about 9.5, 10 inches long and nearly as wide. Enough for detail, not so huge they take up a bunch of shelf space, but it's a good in-between. And I still like the Eaglemoss stands. I think they have a lot of weight on the bottom, and they're numbered, and I don't know, some people complain about them, but I think those people need to look at some of the other stands that other different die-cast models come with, and they might appreciate these a little more. Compared to some, they're miraculous. Anyway, guys, as always, I did my best to get this in frame. I hope at least you got an idea of what it looks like. I appreciate you bearing with me and having patience. I do what I can. But yeah, if you haven't, you might check out my other videos. I've got all the other Battlestar ships as well. Well, if you have any questions or comments, please do post them below. And if you could, like, share, and subscribe. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.